we rolling?
We are.
Okay. Welcome to our Tuesday review. Tonight we're going to be talking about some more Utah law topics and basic concepts that I think that, well, I know that they're going to be very valuable to you when you are sitting in front of a computer taking the test so you can get your real estate exam or your real estate license. You don't care about the exam, you just want the license. But Dan Naylor is with us tonight. He's the owner of our school and also our technical advisor and moderator today. And it might be dropping a comment in once in a while. Sometimes he just lets me do all the talking. But if I need to be corrected, Dan, just jump right in. But my name's Rick Roller, and I'm your game show host for this evening. We're going to go through 10 questions that I know that are going to be important to you. So let's just hop right in and get after them. Oh, by the way, if you are looking for a really good resource to take the real estate exam and you do not have a copy of our school manuals, you guys, you really ought to invest in those. I've talked to several people this week that, well, I don't know, I didn't think I'd need the manual because I've taken online classes before and blah, blah, blah. Look, this is a multiple choice test. That is true. You only need a 70%. Or 80% if you're trying to get a broker's license. That is true. But these questions are crafted very carefully to make you flunk. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, guys. But in fact, I used to be an item writer for these companies that do all the testing. I wrote the whole test for Texas. For a while, they used my test for quite a number of years, but it's usually they just let people like me just write pieces of it. They don't want any one person having access to all their questions, but there are 3,000 questions in that database that are meticulously crafted actually to lead you in the wrong direction. Because if you think about it from a business standpoint, if you are a test company, there's only so many people that want to get a real estate license at any particular time. So the only way to increase your profitability is to get them to take the test more than once. So they want a fair question. They want a question that can actually, if the authorities in Utah came after the testing company and said, we think your test is too hard, they have a mechanism for testing that and comparing the current test to previous tests so that they can prove that, oh no, that test wasn't any harder than any of the other ones. It's really smart what they've done, but they would rather you took the test 2 and 3 times. I mean, come on. Let's look at it from a business standpoint. But they're fair about it if you'll put in the effort. But what I've been finding this last week or so is I've had to talk to a lot of people I didn't think I needed to buy the manuals. And I said, well, how much is it going to cost you to take the test again? And wouldn't you have been better off having a resource material you can use for your whole real estate career? So the manuals are excellent. And Dan's done a lot of work in keeping them current, with law changes. We have law changes every year. And so just want to let you know, that is available to you if you want it. We have stacks of them over at the school. And if you haven't bought one, I'd strongly recommend it. Okay, now let's get into our first question tonight. All right, let me get in here. Okay, the first question tonight is, would it be prudent of a broker seeking a listing agreement on a parcel to determine? Okay. So what do we have here? I suggest you read the stem of the question twice. So let's read it again. It would be prudent. Yeah, I missed this words in there. It would be prudent of a broker seeking a listing agreement on a parcel to determine. Okay, what is important for me to know as a listing broker? All right. A, that the party signing the listing agreement has the authority to do so. Now that's not just a prudent. That's critical. So hang on to that one. That's a real good one. Okay. B, the listing contract has been approved by an agency. I don't even know what that means, but what, your contract's been approved? There are some forms in Utah that are state approved forms. Our real estate purchase contract is a state approved form. We have a few others, but there is no state-approved listing contract. So each principal broker can design whatever listing contract they want. Most of them use one that's available to us through the MLS, the multiple listing service. And so they have one we're all using, but that's not a state approved form. That's a form that's owned by the Utah Association of Realtors and is distributed through them. And it's on the internet. It's all over the internet. So the correct answer to this one, is course A. But the listing contracts have been approved by an agency? No. The brokers and other principals agree to the transaction? Yeah, I mean, they signed the listing, didn't they? Or they signed the form. Now, there's two types of listings, too. There's a buyer's listing, and then there's a seller's listing. So we could be talking about either one of those. The principals are adequately represented by legal counsel. Well, okay, those other ones are throwaways. A is the correct answer, and if you're tuned in, if you've been reading your manual and if you've been studying, I don't think you're going to miss this one at all. Number 2. Okay, wow, another great one. An agent obtains the listing. I love listings, which ensures compensation for procuring a customer, provided the agent is the procuring cause. Well, yeah, that's how it works. This agent is entered into A, exclusive right to sell, exclusive agency, open listing, or net listing. First of all, net listings are illegal in Utah. They're illegal in most states because it kind of puts you at, so D can't be correct, but because it kind of puts you at odds with your principal, be they the buyer or the seller. A net listing says, Mr. Seller, you would net this much money, and anything over that I'm going to keep as my commission. Now, some sellers who are unaware of market values, maybe they live out of state, you've talked to them to listing their house, maybe they inherited it. It was their mother's or father's house. And they inherited the house, so they're really in it, and it was free and clear. They've been renting it out for a few years. They've been under renting it. They haven't been renting it at the high rates that we're getting in Utah right now for rents because they're uninformed. They've been renting it for $600, $700, $800 a month or some silly thing where it should be $1,500 or $2,500. Who knows? But anything you want 400, okay, I get you 400. Anything over that is my commission. So, and you're excited because it's going to sell for 550. You think, oh man, I'll make a cool 150 on this deal. Well, it doesn't work. Net listings are illegal in Utah and most states. Okay, C, open listing is anyone that sells it, anyone that brings a buyer is going to get a commission. Now, regardless of your procuring cause or not. So it's either that's not what we use either. We use open listings occasionally on maybe some bigger deals that are pocket listings. I would really recommend that you use an exclusive right to sell or exclusive agency. The answer to this question is actually either going to be A or B. But it's not. It's C. Why? Let's read the question again. An agent obtains a listing which ensures compensation for procuring a customer, provided the agent is a procuring cause. The agent has entered into, no matter who brought the buyer, if you listed it with the seller and you have an exclusive right to sell listing, that's what it means. You have an exclusive right to sell that property. And it, in the verbiage in that particular agreement also says that you can solicit the cooperation of other licensed agents in our state. So, you're going to get your piece of it. Usually commissions are divided into two pieces, one for the listing and one for the working with the buyer. And so that's really kind of how it works. So exclusive right to sell, exclusive agency. An exclusive agency is a listing that we do not use as much. For sale by owners love it because you can talk to a for sale by owner and say, well, I've got a unique marketing program where you let me do what I do, which is put it on the MLS and put up a sign in front and whatnot. And you can continue to market it on your own if you'd like. And if you find your own buyer and you don't use me, then you don't have to pay me. And that's an exclusive agency listing. Okay. Well, if you put that on the MLS, there's a special box you have to check that says that it's not an exclusive right to sell, it's an exclusive agency. So other agents know they have to be careful, because you don't want your buyers getting hold of the sellers directly and trying to cut you out of the deal, particularly when you work so hard to find it for them. Exclusive right to sell says no matter who sells it, you get paid. So that's probably the one you want. But on this case, for this question, the reason why this is an open listing is you have to be the procuring cause. See, that provided that you're the procuring cause. You don't have to be the procuring cause of that buyer if you just listed the property, put it on the MLS, had an exclusive right to sell, and another brokerage or another agent, even in the same brokerage you're with, finds the buyer and brings it to the property. You didn't find that buyer. You didn't procure them, but it doesn't matter. You had an exclusive right to sell. Pretty basic, pretty elementary. Next question, please, number 3. But it's, there's some important lessons and distinctions here. And of course, your broker is going to determine which contracts you use. I mean, you might come to them and say, well, I want to use this one. Well, let me check it out. Let me go through it. Let me think about it. Let me talk to my lawyers about it. Let me maybe even run it by somebody up at the Utah Association of Realtors. We have a lot of help in this industry. You're not going to be out there totally alone. You're going to have a broker that's going to watch over you. Some brokers are mother hens and they call you every other day to see how you're doing. Other brokers are a little bit more hands-off. They have regular trainings. They talk to you. They teach you. They mentor you. They're available to you, but but they're not going to go out and list houses with you. But there are duties and there are things that you have to follow. And we're talking about a listing agent now. And, I guess you could argue, well, they're listing buyers, but mainly when it says listing agent, they mean listing sellers. So which of the following are some of your duties? Well, A, to find a buyer. Hey, if you put it on the market and you're taking over the responsibility of marketing that property, you should be out finding a buyer. Now, quite frankly, most buyers we work with come from other agents. But that's okay, because we're going to mobilize the entire real estate community. In fact, that's just how you should say it. Well, Mr. Seller, there's some agents I know that are very greedy, going to really go out and hustle your property as hard as I will because they want the commission. They want to bring their own buyers here. That may happen for me. The reason I actually contacted you was because I did have a seller who I sold their home and they wanted to buy another one in this community. That's why I contacted you. So I may find a buyer for this property. But I'm also going to mobilize the entire real estate community and know how many people that is. In Salt Lake City, which is primarily the board I work in, we have about 9,000 agents. Now it's falling a little bit, with the market changing a little bit. We might fall down to maybe to around 6 or so. When I was on the board of directors of the Salt Lake Board of Realtors, I was served for a few years there. We started with, when I first started on the board of directors, we had about 8,000 agents in the Salt Lake board. But, when the market started to go south a little bit back in, I started in the 70s, okay, late 70s, about 78. But, we had a really interesting time back in about 2008. When things kind of went sideways for a while. We had a lot of foreclosures and whatnot, and we lost a lot of agents because they didn't know how to work, how to change with the industry. So, with that, we went through that, and it was, it was an interesting time. Then of course we built back up now to even more than that. So, the market comes, the market goes, but a good agent, if you want to survive in this business, my, heartfelt, advice to you, we to focus on controlling the inventory, which there's only a few ways to do that. If you've got, huge trust funds, you've got, rich grandfather who thinks you're great and wants to invest in things with you. Hey, go build your own things, go buy land, split it up into lots, put spec homes in there, and work every little aspect of the deal so you get the commission, the profit on the house, the profit on the lot. It's cool when you do those deals, and then find your own buyers. I mean, come on, it only takes a handful of deals to make a couple $100,000, depending on the price range you're working in. But you will have duties, and one of them will be to find a buyer. Okay. Determine the value for a lender. No, the lender really doesn't trust you anyway, or the lenders has underwriting requirements that they have for those loans. And so, one of them is that some disinterested person called an appraiser is going to go out and take a look at it and assure the bank, give them a warm and fuzzy that, yeah, they should go ahead and lend 600,000 on this home because it's worth more than that, or it's worth that. And buyers putting down 20-30% anyway. So they were excited about that. So that's one of the things that the lenders do, but that doesn't involve us. That's through the lender. In fact, the lender actually, when they order an appraisal these days, they don't even get to pick the appraiser. They have to go through a placing service that the appraisers have now, because they're just really suspicious about people showing up and saying, here's the appraisal, because bankers understand that appraisals really are artistic. They're artwork. You could paint with watercolors, you could paint with oils, you could make a bronze sculpture, whatever. But, there's a lot of things you could do to influence that value and to come up with your own artwork. But they don't want to be in the property too heavy. So they get a disinterested person that's licensed by the state of Utah as an appraiser, and they go out and they determine the value. So that determining a value for a lender, we don't even get involved with that. They don't want us involved with that. In fact, the banks really don't want us even talking to the appraisers, although sometimes you have to, because they're out to lunch and you need maybe show them some comps. But they have all kinds of rules these days. See, discover all observable property defects. Are you a property inspector? If they're observable, it means that you're going to walk through the property and see the hole in the carpet, see the hole in the sheetrock, see the, whatever problem there may be, because it's there. If it was hidden, you wouldn't have that. But you're not a property inspector anyway. But we'll think about that for a minute. Provide legal transaction guidance. Okay, are you a lawyer? No. So where do you go? I know the filling out of a pre-approved form for the state of Utah is a limited practice of law. Some agents, when they're in school, find that out. They get all excited. They call their mom and say, Mom, I'm not just going to be a realtor. I'm going to be a junior lawyer because it's a limited practice of law. Well, bag all that. So what do you think? It can't be B. It can't be C, right? I don't know. Could it be D? No, you're not a lawyer. So what is it that we do primarily? Or at least the sellers think we do. And what's that? A, it's find a buyer, right? Yeah. Okay. So another idea here is, you see how short A is compared to the other answers? Generally speaking, it's been my experience, is that when you have a shorter answer, there's a slight favoritism on that being right. Not a whole lot, but if you have absolutely no idea, it's the question from heck, you don't even know where this concept is, you don't even understand what they're talking about, you might go for C. Or you might take your index finger and put it on a computer screen, and rub it up and down until A, B, C, or between A, B, C, and D. And pretty soon one of them is going to be hot because of friction. And that's usually correct 25% of the time. Number 4, please. Thank you, Dad. Yeah, all right. Okay. Because there's only 4 questions. Okay. That's yeah. In other words, you can miss quite a few questions and still pass the exam. I don't want you to miss any questions, but but the heck of it is, in Utah, you walk out of the exam and you say, okay, how did I do? You passed. Oh, great. What was my score? They won't tell you. So you don't know if you got a 98% or, barely made it with a 75 or 80% or something. Okay. Procuring cause, this is a definitional question, and many questions are. For procuring cause, what is it? Is it traceable by an uninterrupted series of casual events? Yeah, that sounds pretty good. B, always the agent when the buyer is represented by that agent. Mm, I don't like things like always. Often maybe, but maybe not always. See, the seller has authorized the agent's actions. Yeah, they did when they signed a listing contract or a buyer's agreement, which is a buyer's listing. Or D, the lawn sign in a typical transaction. That's not procuring cause. Procuring cause, by definition, is drum roll. What is it, Dan? It is. Hey, you knew that, didn't you? It's a traceable by an uninterrupted series of casual events. Now, what do they mean by uninterrupted? Well, if you're working with a buyer and you're showing them homes and then they give up, oh man, properties are too expensive. The interest rates have popped up. We're going to wait. We're going to wait till next fall. And then we'll take another look, see what the market's doing. In fact, I think the market's going to fall down some more in pricing. It's already corrected a little bit. It has. It's come down a little bit. But hot properties are still hot properties, but not all properties are hot properties. And some of them have actually, softened a little bit on pricing. And now I think they're going to come down another 10, 15%, maybe. We'll see. It doesn't matter, buyer's market, seller's market. A buyer's market's when the buyer can get a good deal. The seller's market's when the seller can get a little extra money out of their property. Buyer's market, seller's market doesn't matter. It's always a realtor's market. We just take our 6-7% off the top. But it's this traceable by an uninterrupted series of events. So if you were working with these people in early spring, and then they told you forget about it, we're not going to look anymore, and then later you got with them again, make sure that your contracts are current, your listing contracts are current and everything. Because if there's an interruption, if that buyer didn't like you or didn't think you were doing a good job for them, I don't care what they signed. I mean, technically they should get a release of that buyer's listing agreement. I mean, certainly. But I don't know too many brokers that will try to enforce that when you were working with them in early spring and they didn't formally fire you, but they told you they didn't want to work with you anymore. And they found another agent and they bought a house through them. Technically maybe later, maybe 4 months later, I don't know. But if there's an interruption in that series, of those events that you were working with them, it's going to be a much weaker argument that even if you have an exclusive right to sell, it's going to be a weaker argument. I mean, the judges don't, they want to take care of the public, and they want to protect you as well. I mean, you have a legally binding contract, but I don't know. Any lawsuit these days is about $35,000. So I don't know if that's a profitable way to try to collect your $10,000 commission. Number 5, please. A client suddenly decides to revoke an exclusive right to sell listing midway through the listing term. The reason stated, the client did not like the agent. In this case, okay, what happens? And this really relates back to our short discussion we had on the last question. Let's look at A. The client is criminally liable for discrimination on the basis of the cause for cancellation. What? It's a crime to not like your agent? Of course it is. Everyone's supposed to love you and be excited to pay you, tens of thousands of dollars to sell their properties. I don't know, probably not. But the agent is criminally liable. Criminally liable? It's not criminal if you don't follow a contract. It just means it's a civil case, not a criminal case. So A is not right. B, the client may be liable for a commission and marketing expenses. Now that one's warm and fuzzy. I'd hang on to that one. C, the agent can sue the client for specific performance, even if no customer's been located. Now, if you look up the definition of specific performance, what it is it's suing someone to make them honor their contract. Okay. In this case, this was a listing. They didn't want to pay you. And you're saying, well, we did the work. We got it sold. We can document all this. It was uninterrupted. And you just don't want to pay us because last minute you thought we weren't worth it. No, that's not going to work. Okay. All right. So the agent can sue for specific performance. No, that would be more like a buyer suing to make the seller sell it to him because they had a contract. And the seller said, you know what? I think I undersold this. And I've had so many other people call about it, even after it went under contract with you. So I don't want to sell it to you anymore. I think I can sell it to somebody else for more money. Well, they're already under contract with a different buyer. And so that is who would sue for specific performance. The buyer would. It's not a right that an agent does, or your broker won't sue that anyway for specific performance. That is making the seller sell the house or making the buyer buy the house, which is, in both, can be difficult. Okay, let's look at D. The agent has no recourse but to accept the revocation. I don't know. If you've spent some serious money marketing, early on in my business, I started, as a young agent in Colorado, started in Colorado. By my end of the second year, or maybe just barely getting into the third, I had 3 builders I was representing, and it was great. I always had a lot of inventory. They're all brand new homes, and we had good contracts with them and whatnot. And I worked real hard for them. I found them the lots usually, and then I make a commission on the lot, and then I make a commission on the whole property when it's sold. So it was we made a lot of money. It was great, and you could do the same thing. There's not a lot of magic in this business. You just have to learn what works in what markets and then do the work. The reason when I was on the board of directors that we lost half our, well, go ahead and bring up the answer to this one, Dan. But the reason why we lost half our membership was the fact that people didn't know how to work in a down market. And we were in a market that was falling, and a lot of agents that only worked in an up market. What kind of market have we had the last few years? A market that's gone up, 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 or a market that's gone down, or a market's been, kind of wishy-washy. It's been a market like this. So anyone that's been in a business less than 5 years or so, this is the kind of market they're used to and know how to work. And you get into a market like this, and you can make just as much money or more, but you've got to know what to do, where to do, and what to do and how to do it, and so it can be really important. Obviously, the answer is B to this one. I kind of gave it away, but they may be liable, and they're not going to willingly write a check. You're going to have to force them into it, usually by threatening to sue. And you can't sue because you don't own the listing. Who owns the listing? Be it buyer's listing or be it seller's listing. Who owns that listing? It's your principal broker. Yeah. So yeah, that's right, Dad. So if the broker doesn't want to sue, you're out of luck. So get a broker that will back you up. Go ahead, Dan.
I got a question.
Okay. What's the question, please?
So on may be liable, when I first started, there were some agents named Bob and Janet Fox, and when they would take a 6-month listing and they'd put all of their work and their marketing expense into it, they'd actually add an addendum to the listing contract that if the client canceled the listing before that 6 months, that they would be reimbursed their marketing expenses.
Yeah.
So what other way?
That's not unusual.
So, okay. So would that be the only way to fall in the may be liable? Or what other scenario?
Well, the reason why it says may be liable is that you could say, well, look, here's the copy of the contract you signed. I have highlighted the section that says you're going to you can cancel a listing, but you're going to reimburse me for my marketing expenses. And here's an invoice for that. It's all detailed on what I spent and whatever, and a reasonable fees for advertising and time and things that signage and whatever else I paid for to make this all happen. And you don't love me anymore. Well, okay, But are they just going to write a check? Well, they may if they're honorable people, and they may not if they're dishonorable people, you know, and I shouldn't call them dishonorable, except that, you know, these contracts are very clearly, plainly worded. You know, unfortunately, as an agent, we don't, you know, many agents don't explain what they're obligating themselves to. You know, now in this contract, you understand, you know, you're obligating here, 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 and here, you know, and so that's why it says it may be, you know, I mean, yeah, they should, but what if they don't? Well, then you're going to have to sue them. Well, but wait a minute, I can't sue them. I'm not the broker. The broker's going to have to sue them, get your money, advance the $35,000 it costs to sue them, and get that great, you know, $18,000 commission, and then split it with you. Your brokers say it's not worth it. I'm not going to pursue it. And you really don't have much recourse except for the fact that you could change brokerages, was get someone with the spine, you know. So, but that's why it may, you know, it may be, and you may not get paid too. You know, it's just the way the world works. Sometimes, you know, a lot of people aren't used to honoring their obligations anymore, whether it's they're paying their bills or honoring their marriage covenants or or whatever, speed limits. It doesn't matter, you know, drinking and driving. I mean, you know, we live in a really interesting society these days, and you know, I mean, my word is my bond, you know, makes some people giggle. You know, and let's go to 6, please. Thank you, Daniel. Number 6, the definition of a fixture. This is always on the test. In fact, most of these concepts are always on the test. That's why we've got them highlighted here, and we spend so much time every other Tuesday working with you guys to hammer these in, you know. But the definition of a fixture is a matter of law. Why does the agent have to include in the listing agreement a list of fixtures included in the price? Well, because some things, some things are just the sellers don't have, most of them don't have a real estate license. If they had a real estate license, they'd list their own property. You know, a lot of them haven't been through real estate school. They haven't learned all these terms. They don't even know what a fixture is. I mean, they figure, you know, there's a plumbing fixture, you know, or a light fixture, and they all need to be included, but sometimes you have to be really specific. So some fixtures may not be installed per code. Well, does that eliminate them from the sale of the house? No, not necessarily. It just means they weren't, you know, for an electrical device, maybe it wasn't grounded correctly, or maybe they should have used a higher gauge of wiring and they used a thinner wire. I mean, who knows? You know, I mean, maybe a lot of homes, building codes have changed and they've gotten better and more protective of the people that live in a home as the years have gone by. Ground fault circuit in bathrooms and kitchens is an important thing, but a lot of, you know, that wasn't even invented till, you know, about mid 80s or so. So, you know, the older homes may not have everything brought up to the current code. So some fixtures may not be installed per code. That doesn't exempt them from the sale. Now, the definition of a fixture really, now listen closely, the definition of a fixture really is a piece of personal property that became real. And why did it become real? Well, the way it was attached to the home is one thing. I mean, you go into a bathroom and most mirrors are like, you know, screwed and glued to the wall, you know, I mean, on the other hand, some mirrors are not. Some mirrors are, you know, have like a whole oak frame around them and they're hung by just a cable, you know. Well, that's not permanently installed. You can quickly pick that up and walk away with it. But do buyers normally expect to have a mirror in the bathroom? Well, of course they do, you know, and so they saw it when they saw the house. So and then you go to Park City and some of these homes, you know, they wouldn't be fixtures, but they include a lot of personal property, washer and dryers, refrigerators, you know, a lot of things that aren't necessarily classified as a fixture. But the more clear, I mean, if you wrote a contract and it said, and all fixtures are included, that's a very vague. If you wrote a contract and said, and the washer is included, the dryer is included, which neither one would normally be a fixture, okay? But the built-in dishwasher would be a fixture. Yeah, you wrote it down. You know, recently we've seen a proliferation of a lot of outdoor type things being put on beautiful homes. Pergolas and outside dining areas or even outside kitchens are beautiful. And some of the little play areas that are put in by grandparents and parents these days are phenomenal. I mean, they paid $20,000 for that thing. It's like better than some of the parks they took their kids to, with the little curly things, the swings that go down and everything, and they're fantastic. But is that a fixture? Well, it may be and it may not be. I mean, how is it installed? I mean, if it's cemented into the ground or put in some sort of permanent foundation, it definitely is a fixture. But remember, the buyers and sellers don't go to real estate school, so they don't necessarily understand what a fixture is. It might be better to write that contract, particularly in Park City stuff, with an inventory of list of all the things, whether they're a fixture or not, or if it's just personal property, that's included with the sale. You need to write your contract so that someone that's not really familiar with the people or the deal can read it and understand what the deal was, because that person is going to be wearing a black robe and sitting on a bench, and have one of these things, and you want it to be very clear, and what the judge will say is, "Well, folks, this is really clear." That swing set section and the pergola were definitely included, and so why'd you take them out? Well, they weren't there when we bought the house. Well, a lot of things weren't there maybe when you bought the house. Maybe didn't have a fence, maybe didn't have a yard, who knows? Okay, but we do need to make agreement clear to all parties, right? But okay, hang on to that one. Only a judge can determine a fixture. No, a contract can definitely determine whether something is a fixture or not. It can call it out as a fixture. And fair housing laws require a list of fixtures. Fair housing laws have nothing to do with fixtures. So, Dan, drum roll. What is our answer, please? Yeah, you already knew, to make an agreement clear to all parties. Wouldn't it be a lot easier to take me with you to the test? We'll just go in together and we'll sit down together. We'll go through and I'll say B, D, A. We'd be out of there in about 35 minutes and you'd pass for sure. It can't be fun. They don't allow me to do that. Number 7, please. The purpose of including a clause on dual agency in the listing agreement is, now, a couple of things here, and very definitional. Dual agency is where you're representing the buyer and the seller. Okay. I mean, let's just think this through for a minute. Okay. The seller lists their house with you. And one of the easiest ways to get more listings in a subdivision is to already have had other listings in that same subdivision that you sold, or at least it appeared you sold. I mean, if you listed a property in a subdivision and you put it up for sale and it was put on the MLS and another company sold it, the public doesn't see that information. All they saw was your sign going up on the property, and in a few weeks or days, there's a sold sticker on it or an under contract sticker on it, and then another few weeks, you're packing up and leaving. They associate that sale with your name because your name was on the sign. So I would strongly suggest that you have a sign that has your telephone number on it. Some brokers would like you to have a company number on it, but I don't want them calling the office. I want them calling my phone, my cell phone. I want the lead from a buyer who's driving by and says, "Oh, we've been out looking for a property for weeks, and we drove by your property and we saw it, and that's why we're calling, and we just love the outside. Can we get inside?" And you say, "Are you working with an agent?" And they say, "No, we're not working with an agent at all." Great. I'd be happy to meet you. Actually, I'm on my way as we speak. I've done a U-turn and on my way out to the house. Can you, wait for a few minutes? I'll be there in about 20 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it would take. And then so that you want your information on that sign. Okay. Because you want to follow through on that. And so how do you get more listings? You market the fact to the people in the neighborhood. I just sold the Monson house, around the corner from yours. Here's what it went for. Here's how long it was on the market. Here's what other properties are going for in the area. If you've been thinking about selling, now is a fantastic time, regardless of what you may have heard, because people are still buying houses, and this is is a great time because you have more serious buyers. Okay, so is this dual agency understanding with your, because so the seller listed the house with you because they thought you were going to sell it. I mean, more often than not, that's what happened. They thought you were going to sell it. So should they have any problem with you bringing a buyer? They expected you to bring a buyer to that listing. Truth is, it'll probably be sold by another company and another agent, but that's okay. Whether you did it, you mobilize the entire real estate community to get it sold. Okay. And so instead of telling your sellers that, well, I'm greedy and I want all the commission, so I'm not even going to put it on the MLS, your listing contract and the way your broker does business will be explained to you in a very excruciating detail so that you do it right. Now, does it bind the seller to a dual agency because you mentioned it in a contract that might happen? No, it doesn't. It just says it might happen. And they'll have to sign another agreement which augments what you already had with them that allows you to represent the buyer. But don't take this junior lawyer thing too seriously. You're not really a lawyer or anything like it. You're just a marketer of property. If they want a lawyer to go over all the documents and stuff with them, although you can explain them, but if they feel uncomfortable with that, they should probably hire a lawyer to go over those documents with them. It's going to cost several $100s, and a larger deal might be several $1,000s, but it might be worth it to them. I don't know. But most sellers don't do that. They just have you explain they expect you to explain the contracts, and they expected you to bring a buyer. So they shouldn't have any problem with that at all. Okay, so it doesn't bind them to dual agency. It just says it might happen, and then you have another agreement that they sign that says, okay, I'm bringing a buyer to my own listing, and you understand I'm representing both of you. D, limit all dual agency to the listing broker's designated agent. No, we don't do that. So out of all these, which do you think it is? A, B, C, or D? Doesn't bind them. It doesn't happen all the time as in D, so you got a choice, A or B. What do you think? Disclose current conflicts of interest? Or to obtain prior consent? Dan, click it out. It is A, to obtain prior consent. Okay? And that's why we might mention it in the listing contract, because it says that at this point, I'm representing you only. But the reason why I even started knocking doors in this neighborhood was the fact that I had two different buyers, not one, but two different buyers are looking for a house here. It might be yours. Okay, so why don't list the house with me? Why I have this great couple of buyers. I'll bring them right over. Number 8, please. Okay, select from the following primary reason that a property condition disclosure is completed by the owner. Okay, property condition disclosures, we do not have a state approved form for this, but we have a form that the Utah Association of Realtors has put together, and that's pretty much the form that we use. But a condition statement is a form that's filled out by the sellers in their own handwriting, and then they sign it, that talks about the property, and what everything is, and all that kind of thing. I mean, what the condition and what's included, what's not included, and whatnot. Okay, usually. But the property condition disclosure is a very important document. You haven't lived in the house, and the seller may not have lived in it either, but usually they have. But if it's a rental that they inherited and they rented it out for 10 years and now they heard the market was good in Utah, so they needed some money, so they wanted to sell it. Maybe it's something they inherited, may not even have a loan on it, so they may have total equity on it. It's fantastic. But the property condition disclosure is to give the buyer an indication from the seller everything they know about the property. Now, one question that comes up quite a bit is, well, like we had a roof leak, but we had a new roof put on that section of the house. So do we have to disclose that? And the answer is, of course you do. I mean, for one thing, it's not a negative thing, it's a positive thing. Hey, we had a problem with the house, we fixed it. And we had it done professionally. Or we didn't. We're handy and we did it ourselves. But go through and they understand that. Now, I do a lot of out of state work with buyers or excuse me, with sellers that own properties in Utah and but they live in another state. The number one is California, and the second is either Idaho or Arizona. But of those three states, Nevada, California, Idaho, Arizona, those the ones that are around us are usually the state, although we do sell a lot of property to Texans as well, particularly in Colorado, the mountainous stuff. The Texans just love it, and they love to come up and hunt up here too. So, but it's the property is located in Utah, but there's two things I require. You always require property condition disclosure be filled out by the seller. But if the seller hasn't even seen the house in years, I don't want them filling out that disclosure and say, I don't know. Or there was a plumbing problem, the tenant told me about it, and we had a plumber go fix it. I mean, it doesn't give enough information. With these out-of-town sellers, I require two things. I require that we do get a property inspection, and I tell the seller they're going to have to pay for it. Now it's going to cost them $400 or $500 usually. And then the other thing I require the seller to do is to provide a home warranty. Now, home warranty is a 1-year contract. There are a number of companies that do it. Some are better than others. But if something broke in the house, like let's say the garage door went out, whether it was the motor and the apparatus or the spring or whatever it was, depending on the home warranty, because most of them cover it, some of them only cover part of that at cost. That's why you need to read them and understand before you recommend one. And there's some that are very liberal and some that are very specific with long paragraphs that allow them to wiggle out of things. You want the shorter paragraphs and the simpler ones. But anyway, I require that with out-of-town owners because they haven't seen the property. They don't even know what condition it's in. So if they do fill out that property condition statement and they're kind of vague on it, at least they have a home warranty and a property inspection. It was done by someone that does that for a living. They're not licensed in Utah right now, but whatever. But let's talk about why do we have the seller fill this out? It itemizes the key points of value of the property. No, or in the property. Not really. It just talks about the condition. It discloses to the seller material facts concerning the property. Okay. D, it itemizes the agent's key talking points. Now, this one we only have 3 answers. So you got a better chance. Okay. So does it itemize the key talking points? Or is it more of disclosing to the buyer material facts concerning the property? Material fact is any fact that would influence the value that they may want to pay or that they may get. So out of these 3, guys, it's not an appraisal. It doesn't point out key points of value, and it doesn't itemize the agent's key talking points either. It's B. Right, Dan? Yep. It discloses to the buyer material facts concerning the property. Okay. A lot of words, material fact, disclosures, property condition statements, agency. You're learning a whole new vocabulary, So implements, something that was real but has become personal. Number 9. A transaction broker owes loyalty to whom? The first party they contact within the same transaction? No one? The title company? Both parties equally? Transaction broker is it's not something we're doing in Utah currently, We will probably get to it sooner than later. I would imagine, maybe in the next, I would guess 3 years, but we may not. It depends what state legislature thinks is important or not. But a transaction broker is someone that's someone that is licensed, but they tell their buyers and they tell their sellers, look, in this transaction, I'll be working as a transaction broker, and what that means to you is I will not have a fiduciary responsibility to you. And you can talk about fiduciaries and what they require and whatnot, but um, fiduciaries have a lot of stringent requirements to it. If you're just a transaction broker, you're saying, look, I'm not representing you, Mr. Seller, and Mr. Buyer, I'm not representing you either. I'm just merely a transaction broker. You will pay me a commission for marketing this property. But if you want a fiduciary to work with you, you might want to hire a lawyer, or you might want to, seek some other help from, money managers or that kind of thing, who have a high responsibility to report to the seller. Now, if you're using our normal listing agreements, then you do have agency, either with one or the other or both. Certainly has nothing to do with D, both parties equally, because that would be representing both sides. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about what is the definition of a transaction broker and who do they owe their loyalty to? The title company? Yeah, most questions are like this one, where you can eliminate two. So the first party that they contact with the same transaction, ooh, sometimes if they rattle on long, they're not right, like I mentioned before. Or B, no one. What do you think, guys? Dan, let's show them. And it would be no one. Why? Because they don't have a fiduciary responsibility, because they're merely a transaction broker. Colorado does this now, Florida does this now, and several other states do this. Utah does not. So right now, this is not a something that's available to you. So probably wouldn't see this question on as often as you might see some others, but it does show up. And I don't want to coming at you from left field and just slapping you on the face and whoa, what the heck is a transaction broker? It's someone that owes a fiduciary to no one. And number 10. All right, and this one, the most significant difference between an owner representation agreement and a buyer representation agreement is, would it be the client? Yeah, buyer representations with a buyer and a owner representations with the seller. So hang on to that one. The commission amount, agency law applications, no, they don't change. They're pretty defined and they're pretty well there all the time. And that in fiduciary responsibilities kind of mirror each other, whether you're working with a buyer or a seller. Responsibilities of loyalty, honesty, and whatnot is okay. So it's not C, and look at D, contract law applications. So you've got a seller's listing and a buyer representation agreement. Okay. Well, one represents a buyer, one represents a seller. Who's your client? Well, if you're on a buyer representation agreement, your client is your buyer. But if you're on a seller representation agreement, your seller is your client. So it would be A. But and there are some transactions where you can represent both. I like representing both people. Now you'll talk to some brokers and they'll say, well, I don't feel comfortable with with representing both the buyer and the seller. I say, why? Well, because of my fiduciary responsibilities, and I want to give them the very best representation. You have to be truthful and honest with everybody, whether you're representing them or not. I mean, you could have a seller's listing with the sign on it, and the buyer comes and you say, well, Mr. Buyer, you stated that you want me to write up an offer for you. That's fantastic. I think it's a wonderful home. You'll really enjoy it here. Now, do you want me to represent you? Which I could do. I could represent you and the seller at the same time. And, some clients might say, I don't think this is necessary. I've owned 13 homes in my career. Hey, I'm a lawyer. Okay. I don't need badges. I don't need no stinking badges, or agent. I don't need no stinking agent. I'm a lawyer, so I'll represent myself. Okay, fine, no problem. So what does that have to do with the commission? Nothing. Or they commission them out? Nothing. Okay. So in a situation like that, since you're the only agent involved, even though the buyer is not represented and you have the contract that specifically states all that, and they agreed to it, okay, then, because they didn't feel like they needed a fiduciary, they didn't want one or they didn't need an agent. We found a house. A lot of people think that what an agent does is you help them find a property, and that is true. We do go out looking for properties and opportunities and things that, that they can invest in and whatnot. And, I mentioned how I was representing builders, and I love scurrying around all over the county looking for new developments and developers that I could work with. Now in our state of Utah, a lot of the developers are also builders and realtors, so they don't, like Ivory Homes has their own staff, and they belong to the boards are realtor. And so they buy tracts of ground and they split it up and do the development. Sometimes they buy developed lots, but a lot of times they just do their own development. A lot of the big builders do. Well, heck, Ivory Homes is, one of the biggest, if not the biggest builder in America. Certainly has been rated number one quite a few times for their quality and service and the numbers that they do. But in this particular case, we're talking about representation agreements. And so it would obviously, you default to an answer that had something to do with clients. Okay. We appreciate you being here tonight. It's fun. My mantra in this business has always been bless lives, make money. Okay. And it's important that you understand that we're in a service business. You need to work real hard for the people that you're working with and show them loyalty and be cordial and make the deals work. And there could be bumps in every deal. There sometimes are bumps. Sometimes the appraisal comes back low. Sometimes the lenders have some stupid requirements that they want. Well, I want further documentation on this or that or the other thing. Well, that's okay. You help run all this down. But the agent is the only one that knows everything about the business. The appraiser is only concerned about the appraisal. The home inspector is only concerned about the home inspection. Okay. The title company is only worried about the legal title and the transfer of that title. You're the only one in this transaction that is the orchestrator, the one conducting the orchestra, and they got to bring in the horns and the drums at the right time. You see the whole picture. Okay. And you're a very, very important part of this transaction. I know, a lot of people say, well, I'd like to just do it all on my own. I'll do it for sale by owner. Typically for sale by owners get a lot less money, or they have a lot of heartaches. And there are people out there that are trying to defraud people, so but commissions are great, and I would encourage you that this is a great time to get in our business. Well, what do you mean? The market's getting a little weaker. Actually it's evening out is what it's doing. It's been way lopsided, like this, to sellers, up here. Well, it needs to come more like this, and but it won't remain there. It'll also go a little this way too. So it's going to be some perfect opportunities for you to talk to some of your well-heeled individuals in your sphere of influence that might want to buy a fourplex or duplex or some investment homes or some investment properties. I mean, selling one of my recent commercial transactions, 1.8 million, that was a nice check. And it was an old restaurant building that has been torn down now, and it was redeveloped. So we're seeing a lot of that happen as well. It is a great time to be in our business. Appreciate you being here tonight. My number, if you want to get a hold of me directly, I've had a lot of calls this week, which has been really encouraging to me. To know that there's a lot of good people getting into the business. But my number is 801-556-8000. That's my secret cell phone number. You've got it now, and you're welcome to call. Do not text me and say, is it okay to call you? Come on, guys, pick up the phone and call. I know it's old school. You really have to talk to someone, but we'll have a great conversation, and I can answer your questions. And don't call me during the exam. But well, they take their phone away from you. They take your phone away from you. You can't do that. I know I could be the most help to you then, but I won't do that. Can't do it. So anyway, thanks for being with us tonight. We have a number of these on national and state topics. These little sessions where we spend about an hour together, sometimes a little less, a little longer. But the whole idea is we focus in on questions and concepts. And you're making the right decision. I've got a little video out there. If you'd like to have it, send me an email, rick@rickroller.com, rick@rickroller.com, and say, send me that email on how to get your home paid off in 10 years. And I'll send you an email. And I can show you how just having 5 transactions and owning each home only 2 years. Now, if you've got teenagers and, they made the cheerleading squad or the football team, they're not moving. You could move, but they'll move in with their friends and stay at that high school, because they just, there's not going to pass up those opportunities. And you don't want to miss out on that either. So, but that's okay. You could buy investment properties, but I could show you how owning a house for 10, it works better on primary residences because we have no tax if you stayed there 24 months. So every 2 years you sell. That's 5 homes over 10 years. And that 5th one you'll be paying cash for. So if that's something that would interest you or something you would like to remake on your own or even share mine, I don't care, with your buyers, and say, you can actually, by buying just a few properties in 10 years, in this case, you're turning each property. So you only own one house at a time, in other cases where your kids are on the football team or the cheerleading squad, you're going to own the one house that you're going to live in, and you're going to buy these investment properties. But it is such a fantastic thing to do. You could change people's lives. I was talking on the phone today with one of our potential agents, and who's taken a test pretty quick, and she wanted to know a little bit more about me. Well, I came from a blue collar family. My dad was an electrician, and I went to college, but still, there's no reason why I should be rich, really, except I worked real hard. But if I hadn't gotten in real estate, we wouldn't be anywhere near the position we're in today. This is a business that can actually make you totally financially independent if you're just work hard and are smart. And you also believe in your own product enough that you buy a few. Okay. Well, thanks for being here with us tonight. Dan, do you have anything you would like to share?
Just grateful that we've got all your expertise, Rick, to add to this. Our students really appreciate it. The course covers everything, but it's nice to hear a fresh perspective and especially with the amount of transactions you've done and the time you spend in the industry, you're invaluable to us. So really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate your kind words. And folks, don't be a stranger. Dan and I are both available. You can call the school. They'll hook you right up, or you can call my cell. I answer my own phone. Appreciate you being with us tonight. And don't be a stranger out there. Keep in touch with us. Come back to the school for your CE credit, and some of the other activities we have. So appreciate you guys. Have a great evening. Thanks, Dan.